The Alpha King of the Silver Dominion had prepared himself for war. He had prepared himself for betrayal. He had prepared himself to watch kingdoms burn if necessary. But he had never prepared himself to bury his son. Prince Kilian lay motionless in the snow. Too still. Too quiet. And beside him, a silver-haired stranger was collapsing, her hands pressed over the child's heart as threads of pale silver light pulsed faintly between them. Ronan Draven stepped forward. The moment his eyes fell on her, his wolf erupted inside his chest. Mine. The word wasn't gentle. It wasn't romantic. It was instinct. Raw. Possessive. Undeniable. Mine. But she was barely breathing. And his son's heartbeat was echoing inside her. The High Seer dropped to her knees, her fingers hovering over the glowing threads. She used silver binding, she whispered. Ronan's pulse thundered in his ears. She saved him, the seer continued softly. But she anchored his life to her own. Silence fell over the clearing. Because if the stranger died, the heir would die with her. And for the first time since taking the throne, the Alpha King did not know what to save first. His kingdom, his son, or the woman his wolf had already claimed. But before we uncover how a wandering healer ended up binding her life to a prince, let me ask you something. Would you risk everything? Your breath, your future, your very heartbeat, for a child who wasn't yours? Stay with me until the end. Because sometimes the bravest choice isn't fighting for a throne. Sometimes it's choosing to stay. 4 hours earlier, the forest had been holding its breath. Chapter 1. 4 hours earlier, the forest had been holding its breath. Not silent, not peaceful, held, as if the trees themselves were waiting for something to happen. Alira Moonfall felt at the moment she stepped beyond the last marked border stone of the Eastern Territory. The air was colder here, sharper. Even the snow beneath her boots seemed to crunch too loudly, like an intruder announcing herself. She adjusted the worn leather strap of her satchel across her shoulder and kept walking. She had learned long ago that hesitation only made fear louder. 7 winters ago, she had buried the last of her family. Not beneath battlefield smoke. Not beneath screams. But beneath quiet snowfall. Her grandparents had died as they had lived, gently, side by side, hands intertwined. Former medics of a royal house that no longer existed, they had taught her everything they knew about mending flesh, easing fevers, and calming pain. They had also taught her something far more dangerous. Silver binding. Never use it unless death is already certain, her grandfather had warned. Because the thread does not ask what it costs, her grandmother had added softly. Alira had nodded. And then she had left. Not because she was rejected. Not because she was unwanted. But because staying meant being pulled into pack politics, into alliances, into wars that had already stolen enough from her. So she walked. Village to village. Territory to territory. Healing for coin. Healing for bread. Healing because it was the only thing that made her feel useful. And never staying long enough to belong. Belonging had a way of becoming a weakness. A branch cracked somewhere ahead. Alira froze. Her senses sharpened instantly. The forest wasn't just holding its breath anymore. It was afraid. Then she felt it. A sharp, violent tug beneath her ribs, not pain. Distress. Her magic reacting before her mind understood why. Someone nearby was hurt. Badly. She closed her eyes briefly, focusing. The sensation flared again. Young. Small. Bleeding. Her jaw tightened. She could walk away. It wasn't her territory. It wasn't her responsibility. And she had survived this long by not stepping into conflicts that weren't hers. But the distress pulsed again, weaker now. Fading. Her grandmother's voice echoed in memory. We heal because we can, not because it is safe. Elira exhaled slowly. Fine, she murmured to the cold air. And she ran toward the pool. Branches whipped against her cloak as she pushed through dense undergrowth. The scent of blood hit her before she saw anything, sharp, metallic, wrong. Then she broke into a clearing. And stopped. A boy, no more than 5, lay in the snow. Not in wolf form. Human. Golden hair matted with red. Breathing shallow. Eyes half-lidded and unfocused. And standing over him was something that should not have existed. A wolf twisted by corruption. Its fur patchy and darkened as if burned from the inside. Veins of faint crimson light pulsed beneath its skin. Its eyes were wrong, not animal, not sentient, but hollow and ravenous. It had already mauled the boy. And it was preparing to finish him. The creature's head snapped toward her. Elira didn't think. She moved. Chapter 2. The creature lunged. Elira dropped to her knees beside the boy instead of running. Not away. Toward him. The wolf beast snarled and sprang, claws tearing through snow where she had just been. She rolled, grabbing the boy's small body and dragging him closer to the trunk of a pine. He was lighter than she expected. Too light. Too cold. Stay with me, she whispered, pressing her palm over his chest. His heartbeat fluttered beneath her fingers. Weak. Erratic. Fading. The corrupted wolf circled, jaws slick with blood, crimson veins pulsing brighter along its mangled body. This wasn't natural. This wasn't a rogue. This was something made. Or twisted. Elira didn't have time to question it. The beast lunged again. This time she met it. She snatched a fallen branch and drove it into the creature's face. It howled, staggering back, but not far enough. It was stronger. Faster. And it wasn't afraid of pain. She could not win this fight. Not with strength. Not with weapons. The boy's pulse skipped beneath her palm. Another beat. Then a long, terrifying pause. No. Her breath left her in a slow, controlled exhale. There was only one option left. The one her grandparents had forbidden. Silver binding was not healing. It was anchoring. It did not repair wounds. It prevented death long enough for life to choose whether to remain. But if used improperly, the thread would not release. She had never attempted it alone. She had never attempted it under attack. And she had never attempted it on someone so close to the edge. The beast charged again. Elira closed her eyes. And reached inward. Not toward the forest. Not toward the earth. But toward the quiet place beneath her ribs where her magic lived. For years it had felt like a faint ember. Gentle. Obedient. Tonight. It answered like a storm. Silver light burst beneath her skin. The beast skidded to a halt mid-lunge as the air itself seemed to tighten. Threads spilled from her fingertips. Not imagined. Not metaphorical. Real. Luminous. Ancient. The wolf creature recoiled, whining in sudden fear. Because this power was not common healing. It was older than the packs. Older than their territories. Older than the wars that carved borders into the land. Her grandmother had called it a relic of the First Era. A magic thought extinct. A thread that could stitch souls to fate itself. Silver binding. Elira pressed both hands over the boy's chest. The silver threads plunged into him. And into her. Pain detonated through her body. Not sharp. Not cutting. But pulling. Like something invisible had hooked into her heartbeat and was tugging. The boy gasped. Air flooded into his lungs. Color rushed faintly back into his face. But the thread did not fade. It thickened. The beast howled in rage and leapt once more. But when it crossed the shimmering boundary of silver light, it shrieked. Its corrupted veins flickered, cracked, then imploded inward. The creature collapsed into ash that scattered across the snow. Silence returned. But the thread remained, still glowing, still tethered between them. Elira's breath hitched. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. The binding should stabilize, then dissolve. Instead, it pulsed, in rhythm. One beat in her chest, one beat in his. Together, her vision blurred. The pull intensified, not draining her life, intertwining it, as if her heart had reached across a chasm and wrapped itself around his. The boy stirred weakly. His fingers curled into her cloak. "Don't," he whispered faintly. "Don't what? Don't leave? Don't stop?" She didn't know. But she felt it. If she let go, if she severed the thread, he would fall back into darkness. And this time, there would be no second attempt. Her strength was slipping. The silver glow flickered. She could feel her own pulse faltering. The thread tightened, locked, and then everything went cold. Her body gave out. She collapsed beside him in the snow. The last thing she felt was his small heartbeat, steady, alive, echoing inside her. And somewhere in the distance, a howl split the night. Not wild, not feral, royal. Chapter 3. The royal howl tore through the forest again. Closer this time. Commanding. Elira did not hear it. She lay unconscious in the snow, silver light faintly flickering between her chest and the boy's small body. Prince Kilian Draven did not move either. But his pulse, steady now, beat in two places. Ronan Draven reached the clearing seconds later. He had followed the howl of his son across half the territory without stopping, without sleeping, without thinking. He burst through the last line of trees and froze. The clearing smelled of blood and burned magic. Ash scattered across the snow. And at the center, his son lay motionless beside a woman he had never seen before. For one terrifying heartbeat, he thought he was too late. The world narrowed. Sound vanished. His control slipped. Then, he felt it. His son's heartbeat. Alive. Weak, but present. Relief nearly brought him to his knees. He stepped forward slowly. And that was when he saw her. Silver hair spilled across the snow like frostlight. Blood stained her cloak. Her hand still rested protectively over Kilian's chest. And between them, a thread. Faint. Glowing. Unnatural. The moment his eyes locked onto her face, his wolf surged violently against his ribs. Mine. The word slammed through him like a war drum. Not a suggestion. Not curiosity. Claim. His jaw tightened. Now was not the time. His son mattered first. Always first. He dropped to one knee beside Kilian and pressed his hand to the boy's chest. Steady. Alive. But not independent. The pulse beneath his palm felt, shared. He shifted his hand to the woman. Her skin was ice cold. Her breathing shallow. And yet, beneath her ribs, he felt the same rhythm, echoing. Ronan's gaze sharpened. What did she do? He demanded quietly. The High Seer arrived moments later, her gray hair whipping in the wind as she knelt across from him. She did not answer immediately. She stared at the thread, then at the ash in the clearing, then at the boy, then at the woman. Her expression changed. Shock, recognition, fear. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, her voice steady despite the tension. She used silver binding. Ronan's expression did not shift, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. That art is extinct. So we believed. The seer lifted trembling fingers toward the glowing thread but did not touch it. She anchored his life to hers. He was moments from death. She pulled him back. And the cost? The seer swallowed. If her heart stops. Ronan finished it for her. His will too. Silence swallowed the clearing. Wind moved through the trees. The thread pulsed faintly between them. Alive. Unbreakable. His wolf pressed harder against his control. Mine. She is mine. Ronan exhaled slowly through his nose. His son lay bound to a stranger. A stranger who had saved him. A stranger who now held the future of the Silver Dominion inside her failing chest. And that stranger was his mate. He did not say it aloud. Not yet. Instead, he stood. Controlled. Commanding. Bring them both, he ordered. Alive. There was no panic. No one raised their voice. But the wolves around him moved instantly. Because beneath his composure, they could feel it. The king was furious. Not at her. Not yet. But at whatever had forced her to do this. At whatever had nearly taken his son. And at fate itself. For choosing this moment to present him with his mate. Bound. Dying. And already more dangerous than anyone realized. Chapter 4. The palace gates opened without question. They always did for their king. But this time, the wolves lining the courtyard stared. Not at Ronan. Not at the prince. At the woman carried between them. Unconscious. Blood-stained. Glowing faintly. The silver thread between her and Killian had dimmed, but it had not vanished. It shimmered like frost in sunlight, subtle, but unmistakable to those sensitive to magic. The High Seer walked close behind. Her silence spoke louder than any announcement. Servants stepped back. Guards exchanged looks. Ronan felt it immediately. The shift. The questions. He did not slow. Clear the east wing, he commanded calmly. No one enters without my order. No one argued. But whispers followed. By the time Alira was laid carefully in the chamber beside the prince's room, the palace already knew two things. The heir had nearly died. And a stranger had returned with him. Bound. Killian stirred first. He woke with a sharp breath, eyes wide, searching. Father. Ronan was at his side instantly. I'm here. The boy's small hand gripped his sleeve. She said not to let go, Killian whispered faintly. I tried. But I couldn't. Ronan's chest tightened. He glanced toward the adjacent room where Alira lay unmoving. You didn't, he said quietly. You held on. Killian's eyes shifted toward the doorway. Is she still cold? The question unsettled him. Cold. She felt cold, but she didn't let me be scared. The thread pulsed once. Faint. Ronan felt it in his own ribs. His son was not imagining it. Their rhythms were still aligned. The High Seer entered silently. She stabilizes when he wakes, she murmured. Ronan's gaze sharpened. And when he sleeps? The seer hesitated. She weakens. The implication hung heavy between them. She was not simply bound to his son. She was sustaining him. Even unconscious. By nightfall, the Silver Hall buzzed with quiet tension. Council members gathered in private chambers. The word silver binding was spoken in low tones. Extinct. Forbidden. Manipulation. Opportunity. Ronan allowed none of them near her. But he heard everything. Because a king who does not listen loses control. On the third night, Alira's fingers twitched. Killian sat upright instantly in his bed. She's waking, he breathed. The thread flared. Bright. Alive. Ronan stood. Not rushing. Not panicking. But something fierce coiled tightly beneath his calm. If she woke confused. If she tried to flee. If she broke the thread. The High Seer had made it clear. The prince would not survive that shock. Alira's eyes opened slowly. Grey. Clear. And immediately aware. Her breath caught. She did not move. She did not panic. Her gaze shifted first. Not to the room. Not to the guards. Not to the king. To the thread. Still there. Still pulsing. Her lips parted. Is he alive? Her voice was raw. But steady. Ronan stepped closer. Yes. Only then did she allow her body to relax. Just slightly. That answer had been all that mattered. The thread glowed brighter for a brief second. And Killian smiled from the doorway. I told you I'd stay. Outside the chamber. The council had already begun gathering. Because a bound heir, and a stranger with extinct magic, was not something a kingdom ignored. And tonight, the Silver Hall would not stay quiet. Chapter 5. Alira knew before she fully opened her eyes. Before she saw the carved silver ceiling. Before she felt the silk beneath her fingers. She knew. The thread between her and the child still pulsed faintly inside her chest. And beneath that, another presence. Closer. Hotter. Ancient. Her wolf stirred. Not frightened. Not defensive. Claiming. Her eyes snapped open. Grey met steel blue. Ronan Draven stood at the edge of her bed. Composed. Controlled. But his scent. Storm. Iron. Possession. Her wolf surged. Mine. The word echoed through her ribs like a struck bell. Her breath hitched. Oh. No. Of all the cruel twists fate could offer, it chose this. She had bound herself to a prince. And the prince's father was her mate. Silver binding still shimmered faintly, a delicate echo between her and Killian in the doorway. But the mate bond, that was deeper, primal, unavoidable. The air between her and Ronan shifted. Neither spoke for a long moment. The High Seer watched carefully from the corner. And outside the chamber doors, she could hear the murmur of gathering council members. Alira pushed herself upright slowly. Pain lanced through her ribs. Not from wounds. From the strain of magic. Ronan stepped forward instinctively. Then stopped himself. Control. Always control. You are in the Silver Dominion, he said evenly. You collapsed after using silver binding on my son. She didn't break eye contact. I know where I am. Her voice was steadier than she felt. And I know who you are. A flicker of something passed through his gaze. Understanding. Acknowledgement. So you feel it, he said quietly. Her jaw tightened. Yes. The word carried frustration. Not wonder. Not relief. Frustration. Because this complicated everything. She glanced toward Killian. The boy stood in the doorway, pale but upright, his small hand resting against the wall. The thread between them brightened. The mate bond flared. Two ties. One chosen by sacrifice. One chosen by fate. Her chest tightened. I did not intend to bind him permanently, she said calmly. It was meant to stabilize and dissolve. The High Seer stepped closer. It did not dissolve. I am aware of it. Silence. Ronan folded his hands behind his back. Composed king. But beneath that, his wolf pressed violently against restraint. She is ours. Protect her. Claim her. Do not let them touch her. Because beyond the door, voices were rising. She could control the air. Extinct magic does not reappear without cost. This is manipulation. Or destiny. Ronan's jaw hardened. Alira heard it too. The suspicion. The fear. The political calculation. Her instinct reacted instantly. Leave. Before they decide you are a threat. Before you become a weapon. Before you belong to something again. She swung her legs off the bed. The thread flared violently. Killian gasped. His knees buckled. Ronan moved faster than thought, catching his son before he hit the floor. The connection between Alira and the child pulsed sharply. Pain ripped through her chest. She staggered. The room froze. The High Seer exhaled softly. It cannot be severed abruptly, she said. Ronan lifted his gaze to Alira. Steel met silver. You cannot leave. Not command. Not accusation. Fact. Her fingers curled at her sides. I never stay. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. The mate bond pulsed between them. Not possessive. Not cruel. Just present. Ronan stood slowly, Killian in his arms. If you walk beyond the palace gates in your current state, he said evenly, you risk killing my son. There was no threat in his tone. Only truth. Her throat tightened. Of all the traps she had feared, this was the worst. Not chains. Not cages. Responsibility. The council doors opened without waiting for permission. Elders stepped inside. Measured. Evaluating. One of them bowed stiffly. Your Majesty, the council requests clarification. Ronan did not look away from Alira. You will have it. The mate bond pulsed once more. Strong. Alive. Complicated. And for the first time, Alira realized she was no longer just a wandering healer. She was bound to a prince. Bound to a king. And standing at the center of a kingdom that was already deciding what she would become. Chapter 6. The council did not leave her chamber quietly. They left with purpose. And by nightfall, the silver hall was prepared. Not for celebration. For judgment. The summons was delivered at dawn. By decree of the elders of the Silver Dominion, the woman known as Alira Moonfall would stand before the council to answer for the use of extinct magic and the binding of the air. The word trial was never spoken aloud. It did not need to be. Alira stood alone in the center of the hall. There were no chains and no restraints. But guards lined the walls. The throne rose at the far end of the chamber, carved from pale stone and etched with ancestral sigils. Ronan sat upon it. Not distant. Not cold. But unmistakably king. The mate bond thrummed between them. Steady. Aware. Complicated. The silver thread between her and Killian shimmered faintly, visible now in the sacred hall where ancient magic could not hide. Elder Marrow stepped forward. Alira Moonfall, he began evenly, you are accused of invoking an extinct and forbidden art known as silver binding upon the person of the crown prince without the knowledge or consent of the Dominion. Murmurs rippled across the chamber. Alira did not bow her head. The prince was dying, she said calmly. You admit to the act? I admit to saving his life. A sharper murmur. Varen stepped forward next. Silver binding is not healing. It is entanglement. It is influence. It is a practice outlawed after the collapse of the First Era. It was outlawed because it was abused, she replied evenly. Not because it was evil. The words landed heavily. Marrow's gaze sharpened. Regardless of intention, the heir's life is now dependent upon yours. That places this dominion at risk. At risk. The phrase echoed. Ronan's fingers tightened subtly against the armrest of the throne. State your proposal, he said. Clear. Measured. Controlled. Varen inclined his head. A gradual severance ritual. Conducted by the seer and sanctioned by the council. The bond would weaken over time. The heir would suffer strain, but survive. And her? Ronan asked. A pause. She would be free. Free. The word twisted in Alira's chest. Free to leave. Free to return to the road. Free to walk alone again. The mate bond pulsed faintly. Ronan's gaze never left her. You would endure that? He asked quietly. Not as king. As mate. Her throat tightened. If it protects him, she answered. Killian's voice cut across the chamber. No. The crowd parted instinctively. The young prince strode forward, pale but steady. His hand rested over his own chest. The thread between them brightened. You don't get to undo it, he said, looking directly at the elders. She didn't trap me. She held me when I was falling. A ripple of silver light flickered outward with his emotion. The high seer stiffened. Your Highness. You said she anchored me, Killian continued. But I remember reaching for her. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. The bond responded to his certainty. The air shimmered faintly. Marrow exhaled slowly. Attachment clouds perception, Your Highness. Ronan rose. The chamber stilled instantly. The council forgets itself, he said calmly. But beneath the calm, steel. The healer acted under mortal threat. My son lives because of her. That fact outweighs tradition. Varen's voice hardened slightly. And what of precedent? What of power that could be turned against us? Now the accusation sharpened. Not gratitude. Fear. Ronan descended the steps from the throne. Slowly. Purposefully. He stopped beside Alira. Close enough for the mate bond to flare warm between them. If you believe she seeks dominion, he said quietly, then you do not understand her. His words were not loud, but they carried. She may choose the severance, he added. The chamber stirred again. Alira's breath caught. You would permit it? Marrow asked carefully. Yes. The single word fell like stone. Ronan turned slightly toward her. You will not be kept by fate. Or by me. There it was. The choice. Publicly offered. The mate bond pulsed painfully. Because he meant it. And she felt it. The council began speaking over one another. This is reckless. Begin preparations. We cannot delay. The high seer stepped forward reluctantly. If the severance is to begin, we must start at once. The silver thread flickered uncertainly. Killian's fingers tightened at his sides. Alira's pulse raced. If she agreed, she would walk away. Alive. Unbound. Alone. If she refused, she would remain. Bound to prince. Bound to king. Bound to a kingdom watching her with suspicion. The seer lifted her hands. Silver light gathered faintly at her fingertips. And then, the great doors of the silver hall opened. Not violently. Not hurriedly. Simply opened. The air shifted. Cool. Ancient. Still. Every elder fell silent. The high seer's hands dropped instantly. White robes moved across marble like drifting snow. The high priestess had not stepped into this hall in 100 years. Yet she walked forward as though no time had passed. Her gaze did not sweep the chamber. It settled directly on Alira. Soft. Knowing. The priestess stopped before the gathered council. And spoke only 4 words. Stop what you begin. Silence deepened. She turned to Alira. Child, she said gently. Show them who you are. Chapter 7. The Silver Hall did not breathe. The High Priestess stood at its center like winter-made flesh. Stop what you begin, she repeated softly. The seer's gathering light faded instantly. Elder Marrow stepped forward, voice controlled but uneasy. High Priestess, the council acts to protect the heir. And in your fear, she replied gently, you nearly sever the very blood that protects him. A ripple of confusion moved through the chamber. The priestess turned her gaze fully upon Alira. Not judging. Not demanding. Seeing. Silver binding did not awaken by accident, she said. It answered lineage. The word struck like a bell. Lineage. Elder Varen frowned. That bloodline vanished after the first era. No, the priestess corrected quietly. It withdrew. Silence deepened. Every wolf in the chamber felt it, a subtle pull beneath their ribs. Something old stirring. The first wolves were not rulers, the priestess continued. They were anchors. Their magic bound life without corruption. They were the origin of the Silver Dominion. Her eyes never left Alira, and their blood did not die. The mate bond between Ronan and Alira pulsed. The silver thread between her and Kilian brightened faintly. The priestess stepped closer. Child, she said softly, you have hidden yourself long enough. Alira's heart pounded. She did not want this. She had never wanted legacy. Never wanted thrones. But the chamber pressed in around her. Fear. Suspicion. Expectation. And beneath it, recognition. Her wolf stirred. Not in aggression. In awakening. Ronan felt it before he saw it. The air shifted. Cooler. Sharper. Silver light began to gather beneath Alira's skin, not explosive, not violent. Ancient. Controlled. Her eyes lifted. No longer merely gray. They shimmered like moonlit snow. She stepped forward. And let go. The shift was not chaotic. It was sovereign. Bone and sinew flowed into new form without sound of breaking. Light wrapped her body like drifting frost. And where a lone healer had stood, a snow-white wolf now stood in her place. Not merely pale. Radiant. Her fur gleamed like fresh winter beneath moonlight. Her frame was larger than any wolf in the hall. Graceful. Ancient. Her eyes were silver blue, and knowing. The chamber reacted before thought could intervene. Wolves bowed. Not commanded. Instinct. Something older than hierarchy pressed them downward. Memory embedded in bone. Ronan did not bow immediately. He watched. Because this was not dominance. This was origin. His wolf did not roar. It stilled. Reverent. Then slowly. The Alpha King of the Silver Dominion bent one knee. Not to a ruler. To truth. The elders followed. The guards. The seer. Even Elder Marrow. Kilian stepped forward instead. Small. Steady. He placed his hand against her fur. The silver thread flared warm. Not as chain. As harmony. The priestess spoke into the silence. The first line has returned. No cheer followed. Only awe. Alira shifted back slowly, reclaiming her human form with quiet dignity. She did not look triumphant. She looked overwhelmed. Ronan rose and stepped toward her. The mate bond thrummed between them. Alive. Clear. You owe this dominion nothing, he said softly, loud enough for all to hear. Gasps whispered through the hall. Even now. Even after revelation. The severance can still be performed, he continued. If you wish to walk away, you will walk freely. The priestess did not interfere. The council did not speak. The choice was hers. Alira looked at Kilian. at the thread that now glowed steady and peaceful, at the wolves who had bowed not in fear, but in remembrance. Then at Ronan. Ronan stood before her. "You owe this dominion nothing," he said, voice steady and clear before the entire hall. "The severance can still be performed." A murmur rippled through the elders. He ignored it. "If you wish to walk away, you will walk freely." The silver thread pulsed gently between her and Kilian. The mate bond burned warmer beneath her ribs. Alira did not answer immediately. Her wolf stirred within her. Not urging possession. Not urging dominance. Asking for space. "I do not want a throne," she said quietly. The hall listened. "I did not bind myself to a kingdom." Her gaze shifted to Kilian. The boy stood small but steady, watching her with quiet trust. "For now," she continued softly, "I stay for the prince." The thread brightened, calm, balanced. A breath passed through the chamber. Ronan did not flinch. Did not press. He inclined his head. "Then you stay as protector of my son," he said evenly. "Not Luna. Not mate. Not yet." The high priestess watched with faint approval. Alira met Ronan's eyes once more. "And the bond?" she asked quietly. "It remains," he answered. "But it will never be a cage." For the first time since she woke, she believed him. Chapter 8. The severance was never spoken of again. Not publicly. Instead, the palace shifted slowly. Deliberately. Alira was not confined. Nor was she crowned. She was given rooms overlooking the winter gardens. She was given access to the healing wing. She was given space. Ronan did not hover. But he appeared. Always at measured distance. Walking beside her in the gardens under the excuse of inspecting patrol rotations. Asking about her grandparents. Listening when she spoke of the road. Never interrupting. Never claiming. He courted her as kings once did in stories long forgotten. With patience. With conversation. With respect. He showed her the dominion, not as ruler but as man. The orphaned villages rebuilt after war. The training grounds where Kilian laughed despite bruises. The archives where ancient texts spoke of the first wolves not as myths, but as guardians. "You do not have to walk ahead of me," he told her one evening beneath silver lanterns. "And you do not have to walk behind me." He paused. "You may walk beside me." The mate bond thrummed, not demanding. Inviting. Alira found herself staying longer in each place. Laughing more easily. Sleeping without waking to the instinct to flee. And Kilian. He thrived. The thread between them softened from lifeline to harmony. It no longer flared in panic. It glowed steady. Weeks passed. Winter thinned. The first thaw crept across the dominion. One evening, Alira found Ronan alone in the courtyard. "You are still giving me time," she said quietly. "I will give you all of it," he replied. "And if I never accept?" His gaze did not waver. "Then you will still have a home here." There it was again. Freedom. Without threat. Without resentment. That was the moment she understood. He did not love her because of bloodline. Or prophecy. He loved her because she stood when others would have run. Because she chose a child over safety. Because she chose to stay. "I am tired of leaving," she admitted softly. The mate bond warmed. Not igniting. Settling. "I would like to try," she said. Ronan did not smile broadly. He stepped closer, carefully. "Try," he echoed. And that was how it began. Not with destiny. With decision. Chapter 9. When the moon rose full again, the Dominion gathered. Not summoned by decree. But invited. Alira stood beneath the open sky, no longer merely healer, no longer merely first blood. She stood as woman who had chosen. Ronan stood before her. "I choose you," he said simply. "Not because the bond demands it. Not because the Dominion kneels." His voice carried across the courtyard. "But because you stayed." Elira met his gaze. "I choose you," she answered, "because you offered freedom first." The silver threads shimmered between them, weaving not as restraint, but as unity. The high priestess lifted her hands. "Let this union be remembered not as binding, but as balance." The mate bond sealed fully. Calm. Equal. Kilian stood between them, smiling, no longer fragile, but strong. And when the wolves bowed beneath the moon, it was not in submission. It was in recognition. Epilogue. Years later, they would not speak only of the first blood returned. They would speak of the king who did not claim, of the healer who did not run, of the prince who held on, and of Aluna who stayed, not because she was bound, but because she chose to walk beside a king who understood that love is not possession. It is patience. And the Silver Dominion thrived. Not by force, but by threads that held.